The wind is coming this way. Over the mountains now is off southwest.
And if we needed to shelter, what we want to do is go out there down to the basement. Maybe like once we're in the basement.
I'm not going to say that.
Probably not, because all the windows it has to be in here. And if we have time. Oh.
You don't get no.
Okay.
I don't know.
Like, just leave the doors as is.
Probably close them because the lightning could be distracting. Lightning distracting.
Close them after Lahadi or?
we get started, friends, I want to make sure you all have a prayer book. They're on the book rack out in the foyer. And also a program, because there's stuff in the program that we will be offering tonight as well. So, prayer books and programs, sometimes you have to balance both on your lap. And so that's a talent, that's a skill we just developed. So we're going to start with just a few. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.
Melody that will just bring us in. I'll say more about it in just a moment. I'm mindful on this Shabbat that today is also Transgender Day of Visibility, a day on which we recall, or rather when we call for the acknowledgement of trans and non-binary people and their right to be seen in their fullness, without shame and without fear. That call ringing out even more strongly in the face of recent surges of anti-trans rhetoric and legislation in various parts of the country. So in the spirit of this day as well, I want to teach you all a nigun. It was written by one of the many trans and non-binary leaders we are blessed to have in the American Jewish community, Rabbi Noam Lerman, who is actually originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, now based in Massachusetts, where they serve in a variety of roles in the Boston area, wrote what they call a tree nigun. And so as we sing it together, and as we learn it, as we weave it throughout our worship this evening, we can let the notes flow like water, reaching down to our roots, strengthening us so that we in turn may strengthen one another. Yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, try that. Yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, yada dai dai dai, yada yada dai dai dai, ai yada dai dai dai. Yada dai 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 ai ai dai 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 ai dai dai dai. You know that part. Dai 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 ai dai dai dum. Yada dai 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 ai dai dai dai. Try that. Yada dai 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 ai 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 ai. Ay, ay, ay.
Shabbat Shalom. Before we begin, I do have to say this. We know that there is severe weather in the region. And if anything happens to us tonight, that is, if anything happens to the building, meaning the power goes off or something, just listen for directions. We have emergency lights. We know how to take care of these things. So we are watching out for your welfare as well. The Torah talks of many things, but it particularly speaks of 4 values that I want to bring to our attention tonight, or really just to put here, because I think they're always on our level of attention. One is the fact that we should love our neighbor as we love ourselves, Leviticus. That we should serve and preserve the land on which we live, from Genesis. That we should care for the poor and needy among us because we were strangers in the land of Egypt, and we know what it's like to be a stranger. We know what it's like to be poor and needy. And that we must tirelessly pursue justice. And that's from Deuteronomy. The needy part comes all over the Torah. It's to these purposes that we observe social action Shabbat here at Temple Beth El. One major theme, our major theme on this night, is the preservation of democracy. For it is through the upholding of this nation and our struggle for the protection of civil rights that our nation thrives. As Cantor Nami said, we also meet tonight on this Transgender Day of Visibility when we are, for example, reminded by Rebecca Brucehoff that we make a difference in the world by speaking out and spreading hopeful messages, such as when we tell trans and bigender people in our nature, in our community, that they are not alone and that they are safe here. We hope that they find safe haven among us. We hope that they feel that this is a safe place. Kohelet Rabbah, a midrash composed in the 6th or 7th century of the Common Era, reminds us that when the Blessed Holy One created the first humans, God took them and led them around the Garden of Eden. God said to them, "Look at my works, how beautiful they are. For you I created them. Do not corrupt or destroy my world, for if you corrupt it, there is no one to repair it after you." It is therefore up to us, really in every generation, because it's continuing work, to bring the world toward repair and completion. May we be successful in our work. Ay, day, day, ay, day, day, day. Ay, day, day, ay, day, 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 ay, day, ay, day, day, ay, day, 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 ay, day, 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 ay, day, day, day. Ay, day, day, ay, day, 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 ya, day, 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 ya, day, 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 ay, day, ay, day, day, ay, day, 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 ya, day, 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 ay, day, 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 ya, day, 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 day. Ay, day, day, day. We want to invite you to turn to page 120 in the Sidurim. Okay.
Who can look directly into the light? We can behold only a small portion, a fragment of the light. And when that one light is fragmented, the colors of the rainbow result. So let us give thanks for all the colors that are ours. All of them are part of the one light we are all bathed in, the one light that is our fountain of our life.
Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that burns in the secret fastness of the heart. Blessed are the hearts with strength to stop their beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match consumed in kindling flame.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
The darkness of night descends, and we joyfully embrace this day of rest about to begin. We open ourselves to the infinite possibilities of making our world better. Through these words and these melodies of Kabbalat Shabbat, we invite ourselves to this day of rest as we welcome the Shabbat to help us become better people. We continue with Or Zarua on page 134, toward the bottom of the page, I think, Or Zarua.
Or Zarua la tzadik
132, sorry, 132.
Lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ul yishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ul yishrei lev simcha. Or Zarua la tzadik Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ul yishrei lev simcha. Ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la la.
On page 138, Lecha Dodi. Tonight we're offering verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. In the ninth, on verse 9, we'll raise the open door, beckoning Shabbat to come and join us at this time. Page 138.
Yada la 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 lecha dodi, yada la 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 likrat kala, yada la 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 pnei Shabbat, pnei Shabbat mikabela, yada la 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 lecha dodi, yada la 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 likrat kala, yada la 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 pnei Shabbat. Pnei Shabbat nikabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishme'anu el hamiuchad Adonai echad Shemo echad לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה. יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת כלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה מראש מקדם יצוחה. סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה. יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת כלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה.
Verse 5.
התעוררי, התעוררי, כי בא אורך, קומי אורי, אורי אורי, שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה. יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת כלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. אורי ושלום עצרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה. בואי חלה, בואי חלה, יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת כלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה. יא לה 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 לך דודי, יא לה 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 לקראת כלה, יא לה 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 פני שבת, פני שבת נקבלה.
On page 140, Sadiq Katamar, which is the indented section, there about the middle of the page.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת, צדיק התמר יפרח, כארז בלבנון יזכה, שתולים בבית אדוני, בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו, עוד ינובון בשיבה, דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד, כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא
our busy weeks are so filled with unique opportunities, some call for us to intervene, and some suggest that maybe we not. And the art of living well is deciding when to make those interventions and when to let perhaps others do it, or to say, maybe it's better not to do anything at all. These are decisions we make as individuals, as organizations, as offices, as students, whatever we do. We decide to get involved, but for the cause of social action and the cause of social justice. Each of us can make a difference in the world. We begin Ma'ariv on page 146 with Baruch Hu. We have a nigun first, I think, coming.
Yeah,
but
we can still rise.
But we still rise for call to worship.
Yai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, yai dai, dai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, yai dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai. Dai 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 dai. Baruch hu et Adonai hamevorach.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
Baruch Adonai hamevorach leolam va'ed.
Page 5 in the supplement.
As the sun sinks and the colors of the day turn, we offer a blessing for the twilight. For twilight is neither day nor night, but in between. We are all twilight people. We can never be fully labeled or defined. We are many identities and loves, many genders and none. We are in between roles, at the intersection of histories, or between place and place. We are crisscrossed paths of memory and destination, streaks of light and swirled together. We are neither day nor night. We are both, neither and all.
May the sacred in-between of this evening suspend our certainties, soften our judgments, and widen our vision. May this in-between light illuminate our way to the God who transcends all categories and definitions. May the in-between people who have come to pray be lifted up into this twilight. We cannot always define, we can always say a blessing. Blessed are you, God of all, who brings on the twilight.
Baruch atah Adonai hama'ariv aravi.
Amen. At the middle of page 150, we offer together everlasting love you offered your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your Torah forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to you, Adonai, who loves your people Israel.
ואהבתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ישראל.
Page 152.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto Leolam Va'ed. Please be seated. We continue at the top of 154.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת.
It was in the very traditional community in America and in the world, really, that Jewish authorities are very rare and recognized very infrequently, even in the Orthodox community. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein was such an individual, recognized as an authority, but also recognized as someone with a true neshama, a true heart. At the top of page 6 in the supplement, he offers these words about democracy. On reaching the shores of the United States, Jews found a safe haven. The rights guaranteed by the United States Constitution and the Bill of Rights have allowed us the freedom to practice our religion without interference and to live in this republic in safety. A fundamental principle of Judaism is hakarat hatov, acknowledging the good, that is, recognizing the benefits afforded us and giving expression to our appreciation. Therefore, it is incumbent on each Jewish citizen to participate in the democratic system which guards the freedoms we enjoy. By this, we can express our appreciation and contribute to the continued security of our community. We continue on page 158.
With a combination of melodies that will be hopefully familiar, a nigun that was written specifically for the mishagas of the preparation for the holiday of Pesach, as some of us may be experiencing, and then a very traditional melody that's also considered a tune of the season for Pesach in particular, the melody for Adir Hu. So we'll start with the mishagas tune, the Wishnia nigun. Ay lai 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 lai, ay lai lai lai, ay lai 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 lai, ay lai 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 lai, ay lai lai lai, ay lai 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 lai, ay lai 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 lai, ya la lai 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 lai, ya la lai 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 lai. Ya la lai la lai 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 lai, ya lai 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 lai, ya la lai la lai 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 lai, ya la lai la lai lai lai, ya la lai la lai 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 lai. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh. Nora tehilot osefelet malchutecha ra'u vanecha bokei hayam lifnei Moshe u'Miriam ze'eri Anu ve'amru Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. Yadadai la 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 la, yadadai la 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 la, yadadai la 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 la, yadadai la 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 la, yadadai la 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 la. נאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו יד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל.
Amen. On page 160 and on page 6 of the supplements, we have Hashki Venu tonight. And the Hebrew sections will be on 160, and the English
Some of you may know those
sections.
English words already, and you might not need them from the supplement, but if you need them, they're there.
Please follow along.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen. Shelter us beneath thy wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu l'shalom, l'shalom, v'ha'amidenu shomreinu l'chaim. Ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha, ufros aleinu sukat shlomecha. Amen.
There once was a rabbi who, in a dream, came to enter heaven. And he was permitted to approach the temple in paradise in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden, where all the great teachers were supposed to be spending their eternal lives. And there he saw all these wonderful teachers just sitting around the tables studying Talmud. And he was a little disappointed. And the rabbi asked to himself, sort of, is this all there is to paradise? And suddenly he hears a resounding voice, and the voice says, you are mistaken. The teachers are not in paradise. Paradise is in the teachers. And so may we find indeed paradise. May we find good things for ourselves in the work that we do. May we find ourselves enlivened, elevated, and peaceful within ourselves.
Baruch atah Adonai, Adonai, haporei sukat shalom, aleinu, aleinu ve'al kol amo, Israel ve'al Yerushalayim. Amen. 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 Amen.
It has been anonymously said that democracy is a slow process of stumbling toward the right decision instead of going straight forward toward the wrong decision. In this messy process, may we find companions akin to ourselves with the same goals and the same visions, because therein lies our comfort, and that is the course which we should take. We invite folks to rise for the tefillah, beginning on page 164.
Dai dai dai, dai 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 dai, ya da dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, ai dai, ai dai dai, ya da dai dai, ya da dai dai dai, ai dai dai dai, ya da dai dai dai. I die, die, die. מתי תפתח ופי יגיד תהילתך. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise.
166.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, ve'Elohei avoteinu ve'imoteinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Ve'konei HaKol, Ve'zocher Chastei Avot ve'imahot, Umevi Geula livnei v'neihem, Le'man Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Moshia u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, ve'ezrat Sarah.
Page 168.
אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, משיב הרוח ומוריד הגשם, מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה. ונאמן אתה להחיות הכל, ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל.
Amen. Page 170.
אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלה, ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש.
You may be seated. We now enter into a time of quiet individual prayer, and you know that it's never easy being silent, especially we in this community with our voices and our hopes and our dreams and our actions. But we also do need to promote moments of silence which allow us individually to contemplate who we are, what our needs are, and to learn how to rise above the stings and defeats of life. May our silence indeed be for the regaining of the strength that we might have lost, and may our silence allow us to grow into better people with better lives. At the end of our silent prayer, we'll be on page 7 of the supplement to begin. One of the many commentators of Torah, Rabbi Samuel ben Meir, offers this opinion. If in your opinion the majority are about to commit an error in judgment, do not remain silent because they are the majority. State your view. This applies even if you know beforehand that they will not accept your viewpoint, but that of the majority. On page 4 of the supplement.
You all can just receive this unless, if you know it, by all means, but otherwise, if you just want to listen for a moment, that's all right as well. Let us retell the story of our struggle for the promised land. Let us remember how freedom is won, so our children will understand. Once we were slaves in Egypt, our people and our land were apart. But when Moses stood before that troubled sea, he could make those waters part. Now we are slaves in our own time, the many at the hands of the few. And we who've crossed the sea of slavery before must remember what we must do. In the name of the falsely imprisoned, in the name of all the homeless at heart, in the name of all the history that binds us, we must make those waters part. Someone tonight lives in freedom, somewhere else freedom's just a song of the heart. We must find the river flowing between them, and we must make those waters part. Make those waters part. Troubled seas rising around us, sometimes the promised land seems hidden from view. So we retell these stories, that's how we start to make those waters part. Make those waters part. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav, uya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, uya say shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen. Oh, say shalom, shalom, bimromav, uya say shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'al kol Yisrael. Amen.
We invite you to turn to page 371 in the Siddur, because now we offer prayers of healing and wholeness for people that are ill in the hospital, people who need these prayers in order to encourage them to use their own healing powers within them, so that they can come back to us and be part of the human family with less of the illness, or with the illness behind them. We have about 85 people on our Beth El healing list, people with continuing needs and continuing blessings. And if there are people here tonight who would like to offer the names of people who in their family circle may need a prayer of encouragement and healing from this community, we invite you to offer those names now. Are there other people we should be thinking about tonight?
Pope Francis.
Dear God, whether aloud or in our hearts we name those facing illness and pain, we join our prayers to the prayers of all who love them. On page 371, at the middle of the page, we offer Misha Berach. Misha Berach Avoteinu Mikor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishe Berach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Tonight, the theme of our service is protecting our democracy, and in order to introduce our esteemed speaker, I'd like to invite to the bima Rabbi Bonnie Margulis, who is Executive Director of the Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, and she's chair of the Wisconsin Religious Coalition for Reproductive Choice.
Because I got nothing else to do. Shabbat Shalom. So before I introduce Dan, which I'm very excited to do, I have a quiz for you all. It is a quiz with 3 questions. I'm sure you can answer them, so don't be scared. How many people know that there's an election coming up on Tuesday? Yay. How many people have already voted? Yay. How many of you, when you went to vote, saw 3 referenda on your ballot and thought, I had no idea this was there, and I don't know what they mean, and I don't know how to vote? Oh, see, you were afraid to raise your hands, but I know a few of you had that reaction. So if you have not yet voted, or if you voted but you're still a little bit like, I'm not really sure what I voted for. So these 3 referenda are written, as many referenda are, deliberately to be very confusing, to give you no context, and to give you no analysis or explanation of what they are, or if I vote yes or if I vote no, what will happen. So the first thing to know is that in Wisconsin, referenda are advisory, so not much will happen. But 2 of these are for constitutional amendments, so that's different. So there are 2 bills or 2 referenda that are very similar, and that also is confusing. So one of them has to do with how long a judge can keep somebody detained pre-trial, before they've gone to trial. And the second one that's connected is under what circumstances a judge can impose cash bail to keep somebody in jail before their trial. These are very discriminatory proposals that disproportionately affect Black and brown people who are disproportionately incarcerated across the country, but most particularly in Wisconsin. And these bills keep people in detention for sometimes long periods of time before they ever get to trial. So they've not been even tried yet, much less convicted of anything, but they are kept in jail. So they lose their jobs, they lose their homes, sometimes they lose custody of their kids. They have just tremendous, devastating consequences. And when they finally get to trial, they may be found innocent, but their lives have been ruined. So these are very, very dangerous bills. The third referendum seems very reasonable, but again, it's given no context. It's basically asks you, do you think that able-bodied adults without dependent children should have work requirements in order to receive benefits? What it doesn't tell you is there already are federal work requirements, so the bill will change nothing. It also doesn't tell you, what does it mean, able-bodied adults? You could be able-bodied physically and able to work physically, but have mental challenges that make it difficult for you to hold down a job, or you could have all kinds of other life challenges that make it difficult, and yet you might be defined as able-bodied. And what does it mean without dependent children? It means that you are not a custodial parent. But you still may be a parent, and you still may have childcare responsibilities. But because you are not the custodial parent, you are defined as being without dependent children. So again, these are bills, these are referenda that are bad policy, badly written, hard to understand. If you have not yet voted, please look very carefully at these referenda and what they will mean, and really figure out for yourself, is this a policy that I can support? So this is the kind of work that Dan does, and now he's going to get up and tell you all the things that I said that were wrong, and correct all of my legal mistakes, because I did not go to law school. But I am very, very privileged and excited to have Dan speak to us tonight. As part of my work with Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, we partner with the Wisconsin Council of Churches on the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign. And through that work, I have had tremendous opportunities to work with Law Forward, which is the public policy and voting rights law firm for which Dan works. It is a nonpartisan, nonprofit law firm. It works on voting rights. It works on making sure we have access to the ballot. It works on partisan gerrymandering. It works on just such a wide swath of issues that help to make sure that we have access to the ballot. And there are many ways in which I've worked with Law Forward and with Dan, and I'm just going to name two. Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice was a party to a lawsuit that Law Forward was our lawyer, pro bono. We could not have done it otherwise because we don't have any money. They were our lawyers to in a suit to try to ensure that we all had drop boxes. I won't tell you the outcome. It was not Law Forward's fault. They did the best they could. That's why we all need to vote for the Supreme Court justice of our choice, whoever that might be. But that's why Tuesday's election is so important. As people who both work on voting rights, we're both part of the Wisconsin Voting Rights Coalition, which is a ever-growing and amazing coalition of voting rights organizations around the state. And we come together every Wednesday and share information, and there's like a million different committees, and Dan and I are both on a few of them. And it never fails that somebody has some kind of legal question, or there's a lawsuit pending, or there's something coming before the courts, and we all say, well, we don't know, but Dan knows. And so Dan will jump in, and not only does he know, but he has that very rare quality in a lawyer. He's able to explain it to us lay people in a way that makes sense to us and that we understand. So I'm extremely excited to have Dan here to talk to us about the threats to our democracy, which sounds kind of depressing, but there's always a silver lining somewhere, and Dan's going to share that with us. And if you want to know more about the Wisconsin Interfaith Voter Engagement Campaign or Wisconsin Faith Voices for Justice, find me at the ONEG. If you want to know more about Law Forward, find Dan. Dan's beautiful wife, who works in healthcare policy, is also here, and is also an amazing advocate and partner for justice. And so we're excited to have you here also, Lisa. And you can read more about Dan and his Jewish bona fides, if that's important to you, in the program book. Come on up.
Well, as part of my Jewish bona fides, I learned not to disagree with rabbis from the Bima, so I'm not going to correct anything that anyone might have said. No, that was absolutely all correct, and I couldn't agree more with the sentiments about the ballot referenda. Good evening and Shabbat Shalom. I'm so happy and honored to be here. I want to thank a few people before I get started. I want to thank Marcia Vandercook, who I know is out of town, not able to join us, but was so thoughtful and gracious in working with me to get ready for this evening. I want to thank, of course, Rabbi Bonnie for her kind and enthusiastic introduction and for her tireless advocacy and the group she leads and all the work she's doing. She gave me a rundown of what her weekend looks like in the lead up to the election, and it was exhausting just kind of hearing about it. It is quite a workload, and she handles it with grace and skill and amazing leadership. And I also want to thank the Social Action Committee and the entire Temple Bethel congregation for inviting me to join you this evening and to talk a little bit about democracy. It's certainly an auspicious time. I'm honored, if a little intimidated, to be speaking with you not just on the eve of such an important election, but also, of course, just a few days before Pesach, on Trans Visibility Day, and now quite a thunderstorm. So it's really quite intimidating. As Rabbi Bonnie mentioned, I work for Law Forward, a nonpartisan nonprofit law firm in Madison. So I'm a lawyer by trade. It's why, for example, I picked up a pen as soon as I came up here. Law Forward exists to protect and strengthen our democracy. The organization stands for a commitment to fair, transparent, and representative governance, where Wisconsinites can participate in free, fair elections in which their voices count and their voices are heard. Much of our work is in litigation. I'm frequently in court along with my colleagues in issues surrounding ballot access, redistricting, election administration, and protecting our democratic institutions. With enormous help from various partners like Rabbi Bonnie and her organizations and others, we also do our best to keep our eyes on what's going on more generally in the ongoing battle over whether democracy will continue to be a viable form of government in Wisconsin and the US into the future, though I promise it's not all doom and gloom. A lot of it is. No, as I was getting ready for this evening, I started looking into how the Torah speaks of democracy, and Rabbi Beitch mentioned the comments from Rabbi Feinstein. I frankly am going to leave it to the rabbis to tell you how the Torah speaks to democracy. That's not my bailiwick. Instead, I turn to what's a foundational Jewish text for me, which is Gimel the Fool. Gimel the Fool is one of my all-time favorite stories. If you haven't read it, I can't recommend it highly enough. There's an excellent translation by Saul Bellow. And I think Gimel the Fool has something to tell us about what democracy is like in Wisconsin today. The story is dense, and it's well known, and I won't try to retell any of it. But the central moral is that it's better to be a fool all your days than for 1 hour to be evil. Although he stumbles and leads in many ways a very troubled life, Gimel remains our hero, he's the hero of the story, because he doesn't give in to cynicism, and instead remains faithful in the face of his tribulations. Working to protect democracy, working on behalf of democracy, working in democracy in 2023 in Wisconsin can often leave one feeling like Gimel. In profound ways, the idea of democratic governance is under existential attack. There are huge examples playing out globally, and I'm sure we all know of them. It's a critical part of the story in the Russian attack on Ukraine. We've been seeing it for years in countries like Hungary and India. And of course, we're all witnessing an ongoing crisis in Israel over what democracy will look like in that country moving forward. In the US, we continue to deal with the fallout of the January 6th insurrections and what it means to have a former president and current candidate, political leaders, and a large constituency that would rather have power than a constitutional order. This process did not start over the last few years, but it's certainly accelerated. We are seeing more and more outright attacks on the institutions and processes of democratic governance itself. I think many of us have an idealized sense, based on what we learned in school, that political actors once fought it out over policy, important policies, racial justice, economic interests, the role of the state in everyday life, but generally agreed on the ground rules. To the extent that that was ever the case, it no longer is. The basic procedures that we all agreed would resolve our differences now themselves are disputed. Professor Rick Hassan has termed this the voting wars, a fight not over what our government will do with the power derived from the consent of the governed, but how various actors will distort that transfer of authority to gain and maintain power in our system. Wisconsin, unfortunately, has long been a leader in this field. If we conceive of democratic governance as the ability of the governed to determine the course of their government by electing officials who would carry out their wishes, Wisconsin is in crisis. Any discussion of what's wrong in Wisconsin today has to start with the gerrymander. By various measures, Wisconsin has one of the worst, if not the worst, legislative gerrymander in the country, meaning we have some of the least representative governance. This level of extreme distortion inherently damages the basic function of democracy. It impedes the ability of the people to translate their ideas about government into law. Abortion access and voting rights are just two big examples. We know that people throughout our state support everyone's right to access abortion care and to have free and safe elections, but the legislature as it's currently composed will not enact laws that reflect these commonly held beliefs. The gerrymander also means no progress or backwards progress on gun control, environmental issues, protecting vulnerable communities like LGBTQ kids, school funding, municipal funding, changing priorities in criminal justice to make our communities safer and to make our world more just, and workers' rights. And the existing maps dilute the power of people of color. Until we can repair representative democracy in the legislature, such that the legislature, regardless of political affiliation, more closely aligns with the views of the people it purports to serve, the laws will not reflect the state's values. There are profound consequences for our politics as well. When you have an extreme gerrymander like what we have today that eliminates inter-party competition, you incentivize politicians to appeal only to the base of their parties and eliminate any type of interest in the types of compromise and coalition building that you need to, for example, build a system of world-class universities, protect our ability to access clean water, or address pandemics. Instead, politicians who are only worried about primary elections are always going to be more likely to stake out the most extreme positions and will refuse to engage in common sense agreements for fear of challenges from the edges of their parties. Perhaps unsurprisingly, a legislature that is this reliant on gerrymandered maps has also taken steps to consolidate their power. For years, the legislature has passed laws that establish barriers to voting. This included photo ID requirements that disproportionately impacted young people and voters of color. Between 2011 and 2019, the legislature also increased residency requirements, eliminated special registration deputies, and made it harder to vote via absentee ballot. It also dismantled Wisconsin's Government Accountability Board, which had long been a model in nonpartisan election administration. The legislature, which has in some ways become the least politically accountable branch, has also diminished the power of the other democratically elected officials in our system, including by giving itself unprecedented authority over how various government agencies will run. This handcuffed agencies' abilities to respond to changing conditions on the ground, like environmental disasters or, again, public health crises. I know many people in this room were involved in that work. Part of this project has been passing harmful constitutional amendments like those that Rabbi Bani mentioned, a process which the legislature has been using more and more. They've also taken aim at the political power of their ideological opponents, as well as the traditional bulwark of democratic governance, a system of secular public schools that inform us so we all have a basis of fact when we have good faith arguments. I'm talking about the legislature. The legislature is, of course, not the only actor in this space, and unfortunately, we've seen our state courts, including our Supreme Court, weaponized in this effort to damage democracy. Just as national actors have obtained nationwide injunctions from handpicked federal judges in Texas on everything from immigration to now limiting access to basic preventative care, we've seen a similar pattern play out in Wisconsin in voting rights. Anti-democratic actors have been very successful in convincing judges in specific counties to change the rules to make voting more difficult. The most visible example was the decision last year that eliminated ballot drop boxes. I'm sorry to spoil the ending to that case, and threatened absentee ballot return assistance, which is a method that many people used and still use, I should say, to return their ballots safely and successfully. Law Forward ended up having to bring a separate federal lawsuit to protect the ability of voters with disabilities to get the type of assistance guaranteed to them by law to return their absentee ballot. In other cases, courts in our state have prohibited election officials from assisting voters by correcting immaterial omissions on ballot absentee certificates, and ended a mechanism by which clerks could help voters who had made errors or who had returned a ballot and then changed their minds as to how they vote. That used to be kind of a mechanism that clerks could use to help voters, no longer. This has been a sustained effort since 2020 and even before 2020, and it shows no signs of slowing as we head into 2024. As of this evening, there are pending cases in various stages that challenge early voting plans in Milwaukee and Racine, the use of federal voter forms, military ballots, and the ability of most voters to request absentee ballots electronically. And of course, last year, as we all know, the Supreme Court, by a margin of 1 vote, entrenched the gerrymander for another 10 years. While many of these cases, like most litigation and the Talmud, turn on technicalities, they fundamentally matter to our democracy. The rules around voting, the mechanics of voting, are important for the same reasons that dismantling the gerrymander is important. If the mechanics of voting are dysfunctional, if it means that someone who wants to cast a ballot can't, if they deny the vote rather than ensure it, then we're not being governed by consent. This could not come at a more critical time. Elections in Wisconsin are decided by razor-thin margins. Last year's Senate election was decided by only 26,718 votes, or 1%, making it the closest Senate election in Wisconsin since 1914. Another statewide race was decided by 7,442 votes, or 0.29%. And we all know the role that Wisconsin has and is fated to play into the future in presidential elections. Depending on how you look at it, the last presidential election in the state was decided either by about 20,600 votes or 1 vote on the Supreme Court. There's every reason to believe that the Handbook for Democracy will continue to be under attack by partisan actors who try to wring out any perceived advantage. As with almost every election over the past 10 years, the outcome of the 2024 election in Wisconsin may well chart the course for democracy in this country for the foreseeable future. So, this brings me to the turn in Gimpel's story and in my remarks. There's clearly much to be fixed in making Wisconsin a thriving democracy again, and plenty of threats on the horizon, the doom and gloom. So what should give us faith in the durability of our system, and what can we do to make sure that government of the people, by the people, for the people endures? The first thing I always like to remind myself is that in many ways we've been here before, and Rabbi Beitch mentioned this as well. Democracy's always been a struggle. It's always been messy. And while today's threats are some of the most acute in living memory, we can take some comfort in the notion that we have learned from our mistakes in the past and can improve upon them. For most of its history and until very recently, this country excluded huge portions of its citizenry from participating in governance by reason of their sex or their race. Elections have been stolen in the past by graft or violence. Despots have won elections dating back to the founding. Some of this is venality and corruption. Some of it is simply human fallibility. Again, Wisconsin's no exception. While we can be proud of certain traditions in our state, including early rejection of the death penalty and refusal to abide by the Fugitive Slave Act, we're also the state that elected Joe McCarthy and produced some of the most segregated cities in the country. My colleague Elizabeth recently ran across another example. When the state was founded, we didn't have a Supreme Court. We didn't have a permanent Supreme Court. Instead, 5 circuit judges would convene in Madison once a year and hear all the appeals. And they were hearing appeals from their own courts. These were decisions they made, which is just a terrible way to run a court. It's just a nightmare. And it didn't go well. And the first Chief Justice of the state, the first Chief Justice we ever had, was a guy named Alexander Stowe. And it got so bad that Alexander Stowe in public writings referred to his fellow judges as consummate blockheads, which I think is about as mean as you could be in 1848. And there's a side story about Alexander Stowe, who's kind of a weird guy. He loved well-ripened meat, which is a horrible term, which meant that he hung chickens outside of his bedroom door until they turned green, in which case he would eat them. Yes. Which I bring up for 2 reasons. One, it's kind of a funny story. And 2, if not pretty gross. And 2, it emphasizes that this is an imperfect system. It's an imperfect system built by imperfect people and run by imperfect people of all stripes, on all sides. But we've nonetheless been able to make progress in our democratic governance to make it a more inclusive system, a system that involves not everybody the way it should, but more people, and we can continue to make that progress over time. The second reason I remain hopeful is that our institutions, while flawed, remain resilient. January 6th and the aftermath of 2020 tested these institutions, but generally they held fast. Courts rejected baseless challenges that sought to overturn election results. Election officials in Wisconsin and elsewhere, partisans and nonpartisans alike, kept to their oaths and continued to do the fundamental work of making sure the voters' voices were heard. They continue to fulfill the core function in our democracy despite an exponential increase in threats, in fear, in violence, and in disruption. Bills that would further erode Wisconsin's constitutional order and democracy have been vetoed or failed. Baseless sham investigations into election results have all ended in embarrassment for those who run them. And I can tell you that during my time in Law Forward and working with others in our coalition, we faced some pretty dark hypotheticals. We had to ask some pretty dark questions, particularly last year, as to what elections might look like. And while not all of them are gone, some of these threats certainly remain. Not all of them came to pass. Elections last year ran very successfully, and we can all be proud of that. Our systems also began to hold some anti-democratic actors accountable for their actions. Institutions like the January 6th Committee have helped identify and shine a light on bad actors. Prosecutions of those involved, appropriately conducted pursuant to due process, continue. I'm proud to say that my colleagues at Law Forward have been a key part of this overall effort as we continue to seek accountability for Wisconsin's 10 fraudulent electors and their co-conspirators through the courts. The third and most important reason I remain hopeful is that more and more people are paying attention and engage with many of the issues that I've discussed tonight. Much of this, unfortunately, is by necessity. Democracy and our ability to shape the laws that govern us is no longer just the water we swim in, but a policy goal in of itself. Even 10 years ago, core democracy issues like gerrymandering were often afterthoughts. Now, they're widely understood by huge parts of the electorate who are voting accordingly. It's no accident. It's the result of effective and sustained activism and organizing by pro-democracy organizers like the Wisconsin Fair Maps Coalition and others. And along with fundamental questions, including the future of abortion access in the state, pro-democracy motivation seems to be working. Even as we continue to see narrow margins, voter turnout increases. Turnout for the February primary that we just had shattered elections for that type of election in our state. Clerks across the state currently are preparing for and handling unprecedented turnout for the spring election. By comparison, only 6 years ago, we had an uncontested Supreme Court race in which no one ran against the incumbent. What we're seeing now is part of a trend for increasing voter turnout, which, regardless of outcome, regardless of partisan affiliation, is a promising development for Wisconsin democracy. It's also a strong indication of an increased understanding of what institutions like the Supreme Court play in shaping and defining the rules of democratic governance in our state. This type of broad-based alignment around democracy is happily not unique to Wisconsin. Again, the most dramatic example is the massive public response to propose fundamental changes in the rule of law in Israel. Elsewhere in the US, we have seen the defeat of election deniers and conspiracy theorists in their attempt to seize public office, particularly in battleground states where they could use that office to disrupt future elections. Voters have passed pro-democracy reforms in states as varied as Utah, Missouri, Michigan, New York, and Florida, and often by wide margins. In short, voters and citizens generally care about the health of their democracy and are willing to fight, vote, spend, and organize to protect it. When they have access to free and fair elections, voters will usually pass measures to make their democracy better for everyone. And that brings me to my last topic, what we can do. It's an enormous question, and some of that will be defined on Tuesday and what our Supreme Court will look like into the future. This will chart in some ways the course of the next few years of democracy in Wisconsin, but it's not everything. I wish I could tell you it was that simple or that we're only one election away from a brighter future. We are in some ways, but in some ways this work has to continue. Each election and the time between each election matters. We have to continue to insist that candidates up and down the ballot, regardless of party, from alder to clerk to justice to president, are committed to upholding and strengthening democratic institutions. We have to mobilize around the candidates who are and reject the candidates who are not. And when pro-democracy candidates are elected, we have to make sure they take steps not only to maintain their own power, but to protect institutions against the types of excesses that we currently see. There are lots of ways to do this. If nothing else, I hope I've convinced you this is a big effort. There are a lot of moving pieces, lots of roles to play. There are plenty more I haven't talked about, and I'd be happy to talk to you about after. We're fortunate to have leaders in this field, individuals and organizations who work day in and day out who can use your support and your time. You can commit to voting for only pro-democracy candidates and encouraging your friends and family to do the same. You can support candidates directly by volunteering or donating. You can become a poll worker, which is likely the best way to learn how these challenges play out on the ground. Like Gimple near the end of his story, you can just go from town to town and tell people about it until children make fun of you and tell you to stop. But the most important thing, of course, is voting, and instilling voting and participation as a fundamental value for you and your families. It's not the most important thing that any of us can do for our democracy. It's usually the only thing. I want to thank you again for inviting me to join you this evening. It's truly been an honor. Good Shabbos and Good Yontif.
We want to invite you to turn to page 7 in the supplement, please.
And this is from Rabbi Yitzchak, Babylonian Talmud. One may appoint a leader over a community only if, after consulting with the community, and they agree to the appointment, as it is stated in Exodus 35:30. And Moses said unto the children of Israel, See, the Eternal has called by the name Bezalel, son of Uri, son of Hur, of the tribe of Judah.
God said to Moses, Is Bezalel a suitable appointment in your eyes? Moses said to God, Master of the universe, if he is a suitable appointment in your eyes, then all the more so in my eyes. The holy, blessed one said to him, Nevertheless, go to ask Israel's opinion. Moses went and said to Israel, Is Bezalel suitable in your eyes? They said to him, If he is suitable in the eyes of the Holy One and in your eyes, all the more so, he is suitable in our eyes.
Thank you. Thank you. We want to invite the community to turn to page 123 as we offer Kiddush on this night, praising God for the Shabbat. Page 123.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat mitzrayim ki banu v'acharta ve'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha be'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh HaShabbat l'chaim. On page 8 of the supplement and on page 586 of the prayer book, here's a place and a time where we balance one with the other. A meditation on Aleinu L'Shaveach, written by two of my teachers, Dan Nichols and Cantor Ellen Dreskin, particularly appropriate given the conversations that we have been having this evening. It's up to us to call ourselves to task, to sing what's good and true, to bring about redemption. It's what we were free to do. For what's the point of being here if we're not moved to change our ways? Aleinu L'Shabeach, it's time to live our praise. We are carrying the stories of the ones who came before. What stories will be told of us when we are here no more? We commit ourselves to action. It brings meaning to our days. Aleinu l'shabeach. It's time to live our praise. It's up to us to own the vision. We are an answer to a call. It's up to us to live the words we speak for the benefit of all. It's up to us to bow down deeply. There's a broken world to raise. Aleinu l'shabeach. It's time to live our praise. Aleinu l'shabeach. It's time to live our praise.
Page 586.
Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol, לתת גדולה ליוצר בראשית, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסד ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינת עוזו בגופי מרומים, הוא אלוהינו אין עוד. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
You may be seated, and we continue together at the top of page 591. 591. May we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding. Love each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand, but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of holiness, of freedom, and of peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
I'm reading on page 594 as we remember those who are no longer part of our lives and part of our world. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream, to be, and oh, to lose. A thing for fools, this. And a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing to love what death has touched. At this point, we remember those who passed away in recent days and those whom we remember who died at this season in years past. If you are here tonight in mourning or observing a yahrzeit, we invite you to rise as the name of your loved one is recited, and then you'll be joined by the rest of our community as together we recite the mourner's Kaddish. These are those whom we've taken into our hearts with our own. The recent deaths connected to members of our community. We remember Annalise Sossman, the mother of Jim Sossman, grandmother of Samantha and Jeremy. Robert Abramovitz, uncle of Eliza Hoffert, great uncle of Corey Hoffert. Malcolm A. Brahms, father of Rabbi Jan Brahms, former rabbi of our community. And Sari Lynn Smith, a cousin of Eliza Hoffert and Corey Hoffert. These are the Artzeiten that we observe at this time. In continuing dedication to their love and memories, we recall Bruce John Adelson, Michael Becker, James Catrona, Ivy Drazen Edelman, Irving Israel Folberg, Sigmund Goldberg, Robert D. Goodman, Donald Gorin, Donald S. Greenbaum, Jack Gustafson, Rogine S. Halpop, Jerome Edward Kahn, Gladys D. Kaufman, Esther Klinger, Sam Krinsky, Zelda Cutler, Viola Leiter, Judith Morley Levitan, Bella Leiser, Maxine Mail, Harry Marianne, Carmela Miller, Harry Miller, Alan Orenstein, Dorothy Kirby, Toby Ida Raff, Diana Renner, Michael Schwartz, Sam Silverberg, Sarah Silverman, Jordan Sobel, Samuel R. Suchman, Charlotte Sweet, Melvin Sweet, Norma Wolins, Shirley Zimmerman. There may be other members of this worship community who are remembering loved ones tonight, and if you are, I invite you to offer names of people who didn't appear on the Kaddish list, yet still are part of our memories and part of our lives and consciousnesses.
Dr. Paula Gilbert-Drone. Kit Iverlitson. Emmy Lou Levy.
And other people we should be remembering tonight.
Melissa Rutledge.
Zichronam livracha, may their memories be blessings in our hearts and the hearts and minds of all those who knew and loved them. Testifying to the faith that binds the generations of humanity together, we now invite you to turn to page 598, and we ask the whole community to rise in consolation and comfort as we offer the mourners Kaddish, page 598. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divra chirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru amen, Yehei shemei Rabbah mevarach le'alam ulalmei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yitaleh v'yithalal shemei dekudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol yoshvei tevel, ve'imru. Amen. May God send peace to all who remember on this night, all who mourn, and we say amen. Please be seated. In a few moments, we're going to conclude our service, and when we do, we invite people to come to the Weinstein Community Court, that's just the other side of these doors, for a festive Oneg Shabbat, which tonight is sponsored by our Temple Beth El Social Action Committee. Thank you all for making this night of social justice consciousness such an important one. And Dan Lenz, we thank you for being with us and sharing your advice and your direction, your views, and your spirit with us. And Lisa, we welcome you as well to our community. Cantor Amy, thank you for being a great Thema partner, as always. We appreciate your music so much and your leadership here with us. Thank you all for being here. For those who participated in our service, we thank you as well. Just a few brief other announcements. First of all, tomorrow morning there will be Torah study at 9 a.m. that will be here in person or on Zoom. You can find out how to get there by going to our website. At 10:30 tomorrow morning, we are invited to participate as Sarah and Leah Golden who are daughters of Susan and Robert Golden, come to our bima as Benot Mitzvah. So that's at 10:30 in the morning here in our sanctuary. On Sunday, April 2nd at 12 noon, there is Mishpacha Moments, a chocolate Seder for our younger families. Although I guess if you're an older person, you could still appreciate chocolate. So, but I think you have to make a reservation for that, and I won't tell you how to do that. So, because I don't know, but I guess it's available on our website. This week, of course, as Dan Lenz reminded us, Passover is beginning Wednesday evening. We have a potluck Passover Seder here at Temple at 6 o'clock that night, and at 6 o'clock on Thursday night, a second night community Passover Seder here at Temple. Reservations are very close to being closed because we had to give our orders to the caterer. So if you haven't made your reservations, you have to slip in just under the wire if you can. So just be forewarned about that. Turn page, it says. So next Friday evening is Shabbat services will be at 5:30 p.m. with a pre-Shabbat Nash, and 6 p.m. will be Shabbalallah, our intergenerational Shabbat service. And a week from tomorrow again will be Torah study, as we have every Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. I would say also, for anybody, if you are interested in going to Israel, we still can get in under the wire. I think we still can register if anyone has an interest to go with us. We have 30 people traveling with us. So we're very excited that we're leaving June 12th, returning June 23rd. So if anybody has an interest, please see Cantor, Nami, or me after services.
And so we'll be turning back into our supplement, page 4. This camp song, Make Those Waters Part by Doug Mishkin, about Pesach. I actually learned this from a teacher who says that she starts all of her Seders with this song, but it does not have a copyright date. So if anyone actually knows how old it is and wants to tell me, I'm always interested in those kinds of things.
It's at least 23 years old.
At least 23. That's true, because that's when this book was published, with my sheet music that I have in front of me. So if you know, if you recall from earlier, you want to join in, you're welcome to. And then we'll conclude, as we began, with a nigun that was named for the trees. And I'm thinking about a prayer for our country that was written by a colleague of ours that asks God to help us to heal and nourish our democracy, that it may be like a tree planted by the water. So perhaps we can carry that with us as well. Let us retell the story of our struggle for the promised land. Let us remember how freedom is won, so our children will understand. Once we were slaves in Egypt, our people and our land were apart. But when Moses stood before that troubled sea, he could make those waters part. Now there are slaves in our own time, the many at the hands of the few. And we who crossed the sea of slavery before must remember what we must do. In the name of the falsely imprisoned, in the name of all the homeless at heart, in the name of all the history that binds us, we must make those waters part. Someone tonight lives in freedom. Somewhere else, freedom's just a song of the heart. We must find the river flowing between them, and we must make those waters part. Make those waters part. Troubled seas rising around us. Sometimes the promised land seems hidden from view. So we retell these stories, that's how we start to make those waters part. Make those waters part. Ay, 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 da 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 da. Ay 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 ay. Da 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 da. Ay 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 ay.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Be well.
Shalom.
Thank you.